The stars had been kind to humanity for 2,000 years. Ever since the Valkyrie ships first appeared in Earth's sky in the year 2847, humans have lived as peaceful members of the Galactic Consortium. They traded goods, shared their music and art, and made friends among the stars. The alien races saw humans as a young species, full of emotion and creativity, but not very important in the grand order of things. Admiral Ben Porter stood on the bridge of his starship, the Endurance, watching the stars pass by through the wide windows. He was 62 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent his whole life keeping the peace between humanity and the alien races. His job was to smile, shake hands, and make sure nobody got angry enough to start a war. "Another quiet day," said Commander Katie Walsh, his second in command. She was a tall woman with red hair and a sharp mind. She had served under Porter for 15 years. "I think the weapon systems on this ship have more dust than actual power cells." Porter smiled at the joke. It was true. Human warships barely used their weapons anymore. There was no need. The Consortium kept the peace, and humanity followed the rules. Far away from the Admiral's ship, on a green and beautiful world called New Virginia, a man named Jake Morrison was living a simple life. He had been a teacher once, but now he worked on a small farm with his wife Laura. They had 3 children, and their youngest was a 7-year-old girl named Lily. She had brown hair and big curious eyes that always seemed to be asking questions about everything. "Daddy, why is the sky blue here, but it was orange on the pictures from Mars?" Lily asked one morning at breakfast. Jake laughed and tried to explain about light and atmosphere, while Laura made pancakes. This was their life, simple, happy, safe. They lived in a small house near a river, and their biggest worry was whether the crops would grow well this season across the 47 colony worlds where humans lived. Millions of families, just like the Morrisons, went about their daily lives. They worked, they laughed, they raised their children, and they never thought about war. War was something from old history books, something their ancestors had done before they learned better. But in the dark halls of Korath Prime, the ancient space station where the Galactic Council met, something terrible was happening. The Council was made up of 12 elder species, races that had traveled the stars for millions of years before humans even learned to make fire. They sat in a great circular chamber, their different forms casting strange shadows in the dim light. High Arbiter Velthax of the Valdari stood at the center. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 eyes that never blinked. His voice echoed through the chamber as he presented his findings. "The humans are changing," he said. "Our scientists have studied their genetics for centuries. They adapt faster than any species we have ever seen. Within 3 more generations, they will develop natural resistance to psionic control." The other council members shifted uncomfortably. Psionic control was how the Consortium maintained order. The Manosian telepaths could reach into the minds of troublemakers and calm them down. It was clean, simple, and nobody got hurt. But if humans became immune to this power, they could not be controlled. "What do you suggest?" asked the Cathari representative, a massive creature covered in black scales. The Cathari were warriors, 7 feet tall and strong enough to break steel with their bare hands. They served as the military arm of the Consortium. Velthax's 4 eyes gleamed. "Resolution 7742. We call it the Preservation Initiative. We will collect human children under the age of 10 from every colony world. They will be brought to our science stations for genetic stabilization. The process will take approximately 40 standard years, and then they will be returned." "You want to take their children?" asked another council member, a floating cloud of light that represented the energy beings of Voss. "It is necessary," Velthax replied. "The children will not be harmed." They will simply be modified to ensure they remain compatible with consortium control. The adult humans will accept this. They have always accepted our decisions. They are a compliant species. The vote was unanimous. All 12 elder species agreed. Resolution 7742 was passed without a single objection. None of them thought to ask the humans. On Earth, Secretary of Defense Marcus Cole was attending his daughter's wedding when he received the message. He was a big man with dark skin and a voice that could fill a room. He had been a soldier once, a long time ago, before humanity stopped needing soldiers. Now his job was mostly ceremonial, attending meetings and signing papers that nobody ever read. But Marcus Cole knew things that other people had forgotten. He knew about Protocol Omega, a secret plan that had been passed down from secretary to secretary for 2,000 years. He knew about the hidden bases, the secret weapons programs, and the training camps disguised as corporate retreats. He knew that humanity had never truly stopped being warriors. They had just learned to hide it. When he read the message about Resolution 7742, his hands began to shake. Not with fear, with something older and darker. Something that humans had buried deep inside themselves when they joined the consortium. He looked around at his daughter dancing with her new husband, at the happy guests eating cake and drinking champagne, at the children running around the garden playing games. He thought about what the consortium was planning to do to those children. Then Marcus Cole excused himself, walked to a private room, and made a phone call that would change the galaxy forever. "This is Cole," he said quietly. "Authorization code. Sleeping Giant. They are coming for our children. Wake everyone up." Within hours, the message spread to every human world, every hidden base, every sleeper agent embedded in alien society. For 2,000 years, humanity had pretended to be sheep. Now the wolves were being called home. Admiral Ben Porter received the message while standing on the bridge of the Endurance. He read it 3 times. Then he looked up at Commander Katie Walsh with eyes that had suddenly become very cold. "Get me a secure channel to Earth," he said, "and tell the crew to start cleaning those weapon systems. We are going to need them." The long peace was about to end, and the galaxy was about to remember why humanity had been so eager to embrace peace in the first place. It was not because they were weak. It was because they knew better than anyone just how terrible they could be when they chose war. The ships came at dawn. On every human world, at exactly the same moment, consortium transport vessels descended from the sky like dark clouds. They blocked out the sun and cast long shadows over cities and towns and small farming villages. Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when he heard the sound. It was a deep humming noise that made the windows rattle and the dog bark. He stepped outside and looked up, and his coffee cup fell from his hands and shattered on the ground. 3 massive ships hung over the valley. They were Valdari designs, sleek and silver, but he could see Kethari markings on their sides. Military vessels. Armed military vessels hovering over a peaceful farming colony. "Lavra," he called out, keeping his voice calm even though his heart was racing. "Take the kids inside, now." But it was already too late. Smaller craft were dropping from the main ships, landing in fields and parking lots and schoolyards. Armored figures emerged from them. Tall Kethari soldiers in black combat gear, carrying weapons that glowed with deadly energy. On New Virginia, on Earth, on Mars, on Titan. On all 47 human colony worlds, the same scene played out. Soldiers marched into schools and daycare centers. They entered homes and hospitals. They had lists in their hands, names of every human child under the age of 10. At Lily's school, a young teacher named Amy tried to stop them. She stood in the doorway of her classroom with her arms spread wide, her voice shaking but determined. "You cannot take these children," she said. "I won't let you." A Cathari soldier looked down at her. He was twice her height and probably 10 times her weight. His yellow eyes showed no emotion at all. "Move aside, human," he said in a deep rumbling voice. "This is authorized by the Galactic Council. Resistance is not permitted." When Amy did not move, the soldier simply pushed her aside with one arm. She flew across the hallway and hit the wall hard. The children screamed. Some of them ran. Most of them were too scared to do anything but cry. Jake Morrison arrived at the school just in time to see soldiers leading children onto a transport. He saw Lily among them, her small hand gripping the hand of another little girl, her face wet with tears. Something inside him broke at that moment. Something ancient and primal that had been sleeping for a very long time. He ran toward the transport. He did not think about the weapons or the armor or the fact that he was just a farmer against trained alien soldiers. He only thought about his daughter, Lily. He screamed, "Let her go!" A Cathari guard turned and struck him across the face with the back of his armored hand. Jake fell to the ground, blood pouring from his nose and mouth. He tried to get up, but the guard put a foot on his chest and pressed down. "Stay down, human," the guard said. "Your offspring will be returned in 40 years. This is for the good of the consortium." Jake watched helplessly as the transport doors closed. He watched as the ship rose into the sky and disappeared into the belly of the larger vessel. He watched until there was nothing left to see but empty sky and broken dreams. All across human space, parents screamed and fought and begged. Some grabbed old hunting rifles and tried to shoot down the transports. They were killed instantly. Others threw themselves in front of the ships, hoping to slow them down. They were pushed aside like insects. The consortium had not expected any real resistance, and they were right. What could humans do against the combined military might of 12 elder species? Commander Katie Walsh was on duty at the orbital station above Earth when the distress calls started coming in. Her console lit up with hundreds, then thousands, then millions of messages. Parents crying for help. Teachers reporting soldiers in their schools. Doctors saying that children were being taken from hospital beds. And then one message that hit her like a punch to the stomach. Her sister's voice, screaming and sobbing. "They took Danny, Katie. They took my boy. He was just eating breakfast, and they broke down the door, and they took him. Please, please, you have to do something." Danny was 9 years old. He liked dinosaurs and video games, and he always asked his Aunt Katie to tell him stories about space. Now he was on a consortium transport ship, heading towards some alien science station, where strangers would experiment on his genes. Katie's hands were shaking as she opened a priority channel to Admiral Porter. He was at a diplomatic summit on the Valdari homeworld, surrounded by the very aliens who had ordered this atrocity. "Admiral," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady, "we have a situation." Admiral Ben Porter listened to her report in silence. When she finished, he stood very still for a long moment. The Valdari diplomats around him were smiling, completely unaware that anything was wrong. They thought this was just another day of peaceful negotiation. Porter walked slowly to the center of the room, where High Arbiter Velthax was sitting on a raised platform. The Valdari looked down at the human with the same mild contempt he always showed to the younger species. "Admiral Porter," Velthax said pleasantly, "I trust you have received news of the Preservation Initiative. I assure you, your offspring will be treated with the utmost care." "You took our children," Porter said. His voice was quiet. Too quiet. "For their own good," Velthax replied, "and for the stability of the consortium. The modifications will be painless. In 40 years, they will be returned to you, and humanity will continue to thrive as a valued member of our community. You should be grateful." Porter nodded slowly. Then he smiled. It was not a nice smile. "High Arbiter," he said. In 2,000 years, humanity has followed every rule. We have paid every tax. We have bowed to every demand. We did this because we wanted peace. We did this because we knew what we were capable of, and we chose to be better." He leaned closer to the Valdari, and his voice dropped to a whisper. "You have made a terrible mistake." Velthax laughed. It was a high, thin sound like wind through dead leaves. "What will you do, Admiral? Your species has no real military. Your weapons are outdated. Your soldiers are farmers and artists. The Gathari alone could crush your entire civilization in a week." Porter straightened up. He looked around at all the alien faces watching him, all the powerful beings who thought they ruled the galaxy. "You forgot something," he said. "You forgot what we were before we chose peace. You forgot what made us the most dangerous species on our homeworld. You forgot that the reason we wanted peace so badly was because we knew exactly what war looked like." He turned and walked toward the door. Before he left, he looked back over his shoulder. "You should not have touched our children." On Earth, Secretary of Defense Marcus Cole stood before a secret gathering of human leaders from every colony world. Their faces appeared on screens around him, each one showing the same expression of grief and rage. "Protocol Omega is active," Cole said. "All sleeper assets are being awakened. All hidden facilities are going operational. All reserve forces are being mobilized." He paused and looked at each face in turn. "They took our children because they thought we were weak. They thought 2,000 years of peace meant we had forgotten how to fight. They were wrong." He pressed a button, and new images appeared on the screens. Ships, weapons, training facilities. Technology that was supposed to have been abandoned centuries ago. "We never forgot," Cole said. "We just chose not to remember." Until now, the galaxy was about to learn a very old lesson. Never threaten someone's child. And never, ever assume that a peaceful species has forgotten how to be anything else. The galaxy had made a simple mistake. They looked at humans and saw small, soft creatures who lived short lives and felt too many emotions. They saw a species that had given up its weapons and embraced peace with open arms. They saw sheep. They forgot to look at the history books. Before the Valdari came, humans had spent their entire existence fighting each other. For 10,000 years, they had perfected the art of war. They invented spears, then swords, then guns, then bombs that could destroy entire cities in a single flash of light. They fought over land, over resources, over ideas, over gods, over nothing at all. They were so good at killing that they almost killed themselves. When the aliens arrived, humanity looked up at the stars and made a choice. They chose to be better. They chose peace. But choosing peace did not mean forgetting how to fight. It meant locking that knowledge away in a dark room and hoping they would never need to open the door again. Now the door was open. Admiral Ben. Porter stood in a hidden military base deep inside an asteroid field. Around him, ships that had been listed as decommissioned for centuries were coming back to life. Engineers who had pretended to be office workers were running through systems checks. Soldiers who had spent their careers as teachers and farmers. And doctors were putting on armor they had kept hidden in their closets. "How long until the fleet is ready?" Porter asked. A young officer named Sam Ortiz checked his tablet. He had been running a coffee shop on Mars last week. Now, he was coordinating the largest military mobilization in human history. 72 hours, sir. Maybe less if we push the crews. Porter nodded. Push them. Every minute we waste is another minute those children spend in enemy hands. On New Virginia, Jake Morrison walked into a building that had been disguised as an agricultural equipment factory. Inside, production lines that had been making tractors and harvesters were now making weapons. His wife Laura was already there, her engineering skills suddenly very much in demand. "I want to fight," Jake told the officer in charge, a woman named Sergeant Rosa Martinez. She looked him up and down with hard eyes. "Can you shoot?" "I was a hunter before I was a farmer. Can you kill?" Jake thought about his daughter's face as the soldiers dragged her away. He thought about the blood dripping from his own face as he lay helpless on the ground. He thought about every parent on every human world who was feeling the same rage and grief that was burning in his chest. "Yes," he said, "I can kill." Rosa handed him a rifle. "Welcome to the militia. Training starts in 1 hour." Across human space, the transformation was happening everywhere. Sleeper agents who had spent decades living among alien species were activating. Lieutenant Megan Price had worked as a cultural attaché on the Minosian homeworld for 30 years. The aliens thought she was just a friendly human who liked to learn about their art and music. They had no idea that she had been mapping every military installation, every supply depot, every communication relay the entire time. She transmitted her data to human command in a single encrypted burst. Similar transmissions came from hundreds of other agents on dozens of alien worlds. Within hours, humanity knew the location of every important target in the consortium. The Voldari had no idea what was coming. They were still celebrating their successful operation, congratulating themselves on how smoothly the collection of human children had gone. High Arbiter Velthax gave a speech to the Galactic Council about how humanity had once again proven itself to be a compliant and cooperative species. He was still speaking when the first human attack began. Commander Katie Walsh led a squadron of fighters toward the prison transport carrying children from the Sol system. The transport was escorted by 6 Cathari warships, each one bristling with weapons and carrying hundreds of elite soldiers. The Cathari commander laughed when he saw the human ships approaching. They were all models, at least according to consortium records. His ships outgunned them 10 to 1. "Human vessels, turn back," he broadcast on all channels. "You cannot win this fight. Surrender now, and we will show mercy." Katie's response was to launch a spread of missiles that did not appear on any consortium database. They were new designs, developed in secret over centuries, using technology that humans had kept hidden from their alien allies. The missiles moved faster than anything the Cathari had ever seen. They dodged defensive fire with impossible agility. They struck with devastating precision. 3 Cathari warships exploded in the first 30 seconds. The Cathari commander stared at his screens in disbelief. "That is impossible," he whispered. "Those weapons do not exist." "Wrong," Katie said over the comm channel. Her voice was cold as ice. "Those weapons exist. We just never showed them to you." The battle lasted 7 minutes. When it was over, all 6 Cathari warships were debris floating in space. The prison transport was captured without a single human casualty. Katie personally boarded the ship and walked through the rows of frightened children until she found her nephew Danny huddled in a corner. "Aunt Katie?" he said, his eyes wide with shock and hope. She knelt down and wrapped her arms around him. "I've got you, buddy. You're safe now." News of the battle spread through the consortium like wildfire. The Voldari dismissed it as a fluke. The Cathari demanded revenge. The other elder species began to feel something they had not felt in millions of years. Fear. Admiral Porter broadcast a message to every world in the consortium. His face appeared on screens in council chambers and military bases and civilian homes across the galaxy. "This message is for the Galactic Council," he said. "You took our children. You thought we would accept it. You thought we were weak. You were wrong." He paused, and his eyes seemed to look directly at every being watching. 2,000 years ago, we chose peace. We chose to put away our weapons and join your community. We did this not because we could not fight, but because we did not want to. We knew what war meant. We knew the cost. We chose to be better. His voice grew harder. "You have broken our trust. You have taken the thing we love most in this universe. Now you will learn why we tried so hard to be peaceful. You will learn what happens when you wake the sleeping giant." He leaned forward. "We are coming. We are coming for every child you took. We are coming for everyone who helped you take them. And we will not stop until they are all home safe." The transmission ended. Across the consortium, military commanders began reviewing their defenses. They looked at the size of the human fleet, at the numbers of human soldiers, at the technology they thought humans possessed. They had no idea how wrong their information was. The Cathari High Command requested a meeting with Admiral Porter. They wanted to negotiate, to explain that they were only following council orders, to perhaps arrange a peaceful solution. Porter's response was simple: "Bring back the children. All of them, unharmed. Then we can talk." The Cathari refused. They were warriors. They did not bow to lesser species. 20-4 hours later, the first human ground forces landed on a Cathari military base. What happened there would become legend. 1,000 human soldiers against 10,000 Cathari warriors. The Cathari were bigger, stronger, and had held that base for 500 years without defeat. The humans took it in 6 hours. When the consortium finally began to understand what they were facing, it was already too late. The sleeping giant was fully awake, and it was very, very angry. The war lasted 18 months. When historians from other species would write about it later, they would call it the most one-sided conflict in galactic history, but not in the direction anyone had expected. Human fleets swept through consortium space like a storm. They moved faster than any force the aliens had ever faced. They appeared where no one expected them. They struck without warning and disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. The tactics they used had been perfected over thousands of years of human warfare, and the consortium had no answer for any of them. Admiral Ben Porter led the main fleet toward Karth Prime, the ancient station where the Galactic Council had fled seeking protection. The station was defended by the combined military forces of all 12 elder species. Over 5,000 warships surrounded it, the largest defensive fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Porter had 300 ships. "Sir," said his tactical officer, a young man named Chris Park, "enemy fleet is forming up. They outnumber us more than 15-1. Porter studied the holographic display showing the enemy positions. He had been studying war for 50 years. He had read every book, analyzed every battle, learned every trick that humanity had ever used against itself. Now he was going to use all of it against an enemy who had never known real war. "Signal the fleet," he said. "Execute Operation Slingshot." The human ships did not fly toward the enemy fleet. Instead, they flew toward a nearby asteroid field. The consortium commanders laughed. They thought the humans were retreating. They thought wrong. Human engineering teams had spent weeks preparing those asteroids. Small engines had been attached to hundreds of them. Now those engines fired, sending massive rocks hurtling toward the consortium fleet at incredible speed. The aliens tried to shoot them down, but there were too many. They tried to dodge, but their formation was too tight. Asteroids the size of buildings smashed into their ships, destroying hundreds of vessels in minutes. The carefully organized defensive fleet fell into chaos. That was when the human ships attacked. Captain Ryan Brooks became famous that day. His destroyer, a small ship with a crew of only 80, found itself surrounded by 15 enemy vessels during the chaos. Any normal commander would have surrendered or tried to run. Brooks did neither. He flew his ship directly into the middle of the enemy formation. He spun and dodged and fired with perfect precision. He used the larger enemy ships as shields against our own allies. He broadcast human war music on all frequencies, ancient songs of battle with drums and horns and voices raised in fierce chorus. The sound alone was enough to terrify crews who had never heard anything like it. By the time reinforcements arrived, Brooks had destroyed 8 enemy ships and the other 7 had fled in terror. His own ship had taken only minor damage. How? The captured consortium captain asked later, shaking with fear. How did you do that? Brooks shrugged. Your people have been at peace for millions of years. Mine have been at war with ourselves for thousands. You have more ships. We have more practice. On the ground, the story was the same. Sergeant Tony Garcia led a company of Marines through the swamps of Cathara, the homeworld of the warrior species that had provided most of the soldiers for the child-taking operation. The Cathari were 7 feet tall, covered in scales that could stop bullets, and had been the most feared ground fighters in the galaxy for longer than humanity had existed. They had never fought humans before. Garcia and his soldiers moved through the swamps like ghosts. They attacked at night when the Cathari could not see well. They set traps that used the aliens' own size and strength against them. They refused to fight fair, refused to stand and face their enemies like honorable warriors. They fought to win, and nothing else mattered. The Cathari soldiers began to experience something new, something their species had never really felt before. They began to feel fear. They began to jump at shadows. They began to refuse orders to enter the swamps where the humans hunted. They are not soldiers, one Cathari commander reported to his superiors. They are predators. They do not fight for honor or glory. They fight to destroy. They will not stop. They do not stop. Even when wounded, even when outnumbered, they keep coming. The Minosian telepaths tried a different approach. Their people could read minds and project emotions. They had maintained peace in the consortium for millions of years by simply reaching into the minds of troublemakers and calming them down. Surely they could do the same to the human commanders. High Telepath Siren was the most powerful psychic in the consortium. She had never failed to control a mind. She had never met a will she could not break. She reached into Admiral Porter's mind during a negotiation session, expecting to find fear that she could amplify, doubt that she could strengthen, memories of loss that she could use to weaken his resolve. What she found instead was something else entirely. She found 2,000 years of deliberately suppressed rage. She found memories of every war humanity had ever fought, passed down through generations in stories and songs and dreams. She found a mind that was not just willing to fight, but was built for it, shaped by millions of years of evolution into the perfect predator. And underneath all of that, she found the primal fury of a species whose children had been stolen. Siren screamed. Her telepathic probe shattered. She collapsed to the floor, her eyes rolled back in her head, her mind broken by the contact. She never recovered. The most powerful telepath in the galaxy spent the rest of her life in a medical facility, muttering about monsters and darkness and the terrible things that lived inside human minds. After that, none Minosian ever tried to read a human again. One by one, the elder species surrendered. The Voldari begged for mercy after their homeworld was blockaded and their government buildings were targeted by precision strikes. The Cathari asked for terms after their military was shattered on a dozen worlds. The others fell in line quickly after seeing what happened to those who resisted. They offered to return the children immediately. They offered reparations, technology, territory, anything humanity wanted. They offered to dissolve the Galactic Council and rebuild the consortium under human leadership. But Admiral Porter and the human leaders wanted one more thing first. They wanted High Arbiter Velthax, the Voldari who had proposed Resolution 7742, had fled to a hidden bunker on a remote moon. He had surrounded himself with the best guards money could buy. He had defenses that were supposed to be impenetrable. Jake Morrison was part of the team that found him. The former farmer had become one of the most effective soldiers in the colonial militia. He had trained for months, fought in 3 campaigns, and earned a reputation for being absolutely relentless. His commanders said he never seemed to get tired, never seemed to lose hope, never stopped pushing forward. They did not know that he carried a picture of his daughter Lily in his pocket. They did not know that he looked at it before every battle. They did not know that it was the only thing keeping him going. When the team breached the bunker, Valfax was waiting for them. His 4 eyes were wide with terror. "Please," he said. "I was only doing what I thought was best for the consortium. I did not know you would react this way. I did not understand." Jake looked at the alien who had ordered the taking of his daughter. He thought about raising his weapon. He thought about pulling the trigger. He thought about ending this creature who had caused so much pain to so many families. But he did not. "You don't get to die," Jake said quietly. "You get to live. You get to watch while we tear down everything you built. You get to see a new galaxy where humans are in charge. And you get to spend the rest of your very long life knowing that you did this. You made us what we are now. This is your fault." Valfax was taken alive. He would stand trial before a human court. He would be sentenced to imprisonment for the remainder of his natural life, and he would have a very long time to think about what he had done. The children came home dot across all the science stations and holding facilities scattered throughout consortium space. Human soldiers found them. Some were scared and confused. Some had been in alien custody for over a year and had started to forget what their homes looked like. A few of the youngest ones did not recognize their own parents at first, but they were alive. They were unharmed. The genetic modification program had barely begun before the human fleet arrived. On New Virginia, Jake Morrison stood at the edge of a landing field and watched the transport descend from the sky. His wife Laura was beside him, holding his hand so tightly that her knuckles were white. They had not slept in 3 days. They had barely eaten. All they could do was wait. The transport doors opened. Children began walking down the ramp, blinking in the bright sunlight, looking around for familiar faces. Volunteers were there to help reunite families, holding signs with names and pictures. Jake did not need a sign. He spotted Lily the moment she appeared in the doorway. She was taller than he remembered. Her hair had grown longer, but those curious brown eyes were exactly the same. "Lily!" He shouted, his voice breaking. She saw him. For a moment, she stood frozen. Then her face lit up with recognition and joy and relief all at once. "Daddy!" She ran to him. He caught her in his arms and lifted her off the ground, holding her against his chest like he would never let go again. Laura wrapped her arms around both of them, and the Morrison family stood there on that landing field, crying and laughing and saying nothing at all because no words were needed. Similar scenes played out across all of human space. Millions of families were made whole again. The nightmare was over, but the galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Council no longer existed. Its grand chamber on Korath Prime had been converted into a museum, a reminder of the old order that had failed so completely. In its place stood the Human Tribunal, a new governing body that would oversee the former consortium under human leadership. Admiral Ben Porter was named the first High Chancellor. He did not want the job. He had spent his whole life keeping the peace, and now he was responsible for rebuilding a galaxy he had helped tear apart. But someone had to do it, and his people trusted him. Commander Katie Walsh stood beside him as the new government was announced. She had been promoted to Admiral herself, in charge of the human fleet that would ensure nothing like the child-taking ever happened again. Her nephew Danny was safe at home, already back in school, already telling his friends stories about his adventure in space. Representatives from all 12 elder species gathered in the Great Hall to hear the terms of the new order. They stood before the human leaders with bowed heads, their pride broken. Their arrogance burned away by 18 months of devastating war. Katie Walsh stepped forward to address them. Her voice was calm and clear. 2,000 years ago, humanity joined the consortium as a junior member. We followed your rules. We accepted your decisions. We trusted you to be fair and wise. You repaid that trust by taking our children. She looked at each representative in turn. That will never happen again. From this day forward, humanity leads the consortium. We will be fair. We will be just. We will protect all species equally. But if anyone threatens human children again, they will face consequences that make this war look gentle. The Voldari representative stepped forward. He was not Velfax, who was now in prison awaiting trial. This was a younger Voldari, chosen specifically because he had opposed Resolution 7742 from the beginning. We understand, he said. We accept your terms. But I must ask a question. For 2,000 years, you hid your true nature from us. Your weapons, your soldiers, your capacity for war. Why? If you were always this strong, why did you pretend to be weak? Chancellor Porter answered. We were not pretending to be weak. We were choosing to be peaceful. Those are not the same thing. We knew what we were capable of. We knew the destruction our species could cause when we went to war. We spent thousands of years fighting ourselves, killing ourselves, nearly destroying ourselves. When we reached the stars, we decided to be better. We locked away our weapons and our warriors and our rage. We tried to evolve past our nature. He paused. But nature does not disappear just because you ignore it. We are what we are. Hunters, predators, survivors. When you threatened our children, you reminded us of that. You woke up the part of ourselves that we tried to forget. And now everyone knows what humanity really is. The room was silent. We do not want to be warriors, Porter continued. We do not enjoy war. We would rather paint pictures and write songs and explore the stars in peace. But we will always protect our families. That is the one thing you must never forget. Be our friends, and we will be the best friends you have ever had. Threaten our children, and we will destroy you. The ceremony ended. The new government began its work. Treaties were signed. Reparations were arranged. Former enemies started the long process of becoming something like allies. It would take time. The scars of the war would not heal quickly. Many humans could not forgive what had been done to their children. Many aliens could not forget the terror of facing human soldiers in battle. But slowly, year by year, trust began to rebuild. 300 years later, human children learned about the Great Awakening in their history classes. They studied the war, the politics, the complex factors that had led to Resolution 7742 and everything that followed. They learned about Admiral Porter and Commander Walsh, and all the heroes who had fought to bring the children home. And they learned the most important lesson of all. Peace was not weakness. Peace was a choice that strong species made because they understood the cost of war. Humanity had proven it could destroy any enemy. Now they worked every day to prove they could also build something better. The former consortium became a true partnership. Humans and Voldari and Cathari and all the other species worked together, learned from each other, built things together that none of them could have built alone. The old arrogance of the elder species faded away. They had seen what happened when they thought themselves superior, and they never wanted to see it again. In every alien culture, there was a saying that passed down through generations. Parents whispered it to their children. Teachers taught it in schools. Leaders remembered it when making decisions. Be kind to the humans. Be very, very kind to their children. On New Virginia, an old man sat on the porch of his farmhouse and watched the sunset. Jake Morrison was 93 years old now. Lavra had passed away 5 years ago. but he still lived in the same house where they had raised their family. Lily came to visit every week. She was a grandmother herself now, with children and grandchildren of her own. She worked as an ambassador, helping to maintain the peace between humanity and the other species of the galaxy. She was good at it. She understood better than most what peace was worth. "How are you feeling today, Dad?" she asked, sitting down beside him. "Old," Jake said with a smile, "but happy." They sat together and watched the stars come out one by one. Somewhere up there, human ships patrolled alongside vessels from other species. Somewhere up there, children of all races learned and played and grew up without fear. Jake thought about the war. He thought about the rage that had driven him to fight, the hatred he had felt for the aliens who took his daughter. Those feelings had faded over the years. He had learned that most of the people he fought against were just following orders. He had learned that forgiveness was possible, even for terrible things, but he had never forgotten the lesson. "They say the galaxy is more peaceful now than it has ever been," Lily said. Jake nodded. "It is, because everyone knows what happens if it isn't. Peace through understanding. Peace through partnership. And peace because everyone remembers that some lines should never be crossed." Lily took her father's hand. "Thank you for coming for me," she said softly. "Thank you for not giving up." Jake squeezed her hand. "You're my daughter," he said simply. "I would have crossed the entire universe for you. Every parent would. That's what the galaxy finally learned. That's what the consortium should have known from the beginning." He looked up at the stars. Never get between a parent and their child. Above them, the galaxy turned slowly on. Human ships sailed among the stars alongside their former enemies. Children of all species slept safely in their beds. And somewhere in the back of every alien mind, there was a small voice that whispered the same warning over and over again. Be kind to the humans. Be very, very kind to their children, because if you are not, they will remind you why they tried so hard to be peaceful in the first place, and you will not enjoy the lesson.